Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Hooked on Sports here on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and wherever you get your podcasting streaming services. My name is John Flynn, and thank you so very much for listening to the podcast once again. So, today is Thursday of week 2 of the NFL season, so we've got action starting tonight. I recorded this episode around 3 p.m. on Thursday, so this is going to be a late upload on YouTube and on your podcast network. So we have things to get into today. Obviously, I'll get into my picks for week number 2 against the spread coming up in a little bit, but as per usual, I get the juices flowing to get into the pick segment and my previews for the games. So three games on tap that I think you should keep your eyes on. I'm looking at the game on Sunday, the much anticipated Super Bowl rematch between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. They'll be facing off in Arrowhead in 4:25 p.m. Eastern on Fox. Everybody gets the game. It'll be a nationally broadcast late window afternoon game on Fox with the Kevin Burkhardt, Tom Brady crew at the game. So I think there are a couple of things that I think we really need to keep our eyes on. And I think with the Philadelphia Eagles, like, how much did they really miss their stud defensive interiorman, Jalen Carter? Now, Jalen Carter was ejected from the season opener against Dallas for inexplicably spitting on the body of Dak Prescott. The NFL made that a 1-game suspension. The game where he spit on his face and was also received a fine of close to $60 million. So that was the suspension there, and the Eagles had a hard time stopping the run at times, especially in the first half on opening night against Dallas. So that Miles Sanders was able to run the ball. Javonte Williams that had a good game. But now that Jalen Carter is back in there, it provides a much taller task for the Kansas City Chiefs. And in the game against the Chargers in Brazil, the Chiefs had problems running the football with their running backs. That 57 of the 98 rushing yards they had in the loss were on the legs of Patrick Mahomes. That Isaiah Pacheco only had 5 carries for 25 yards, and Kareem Hunt only had 5 carries for 16 yards. So that's going to provide a huge challenge for the Kansas City Chiefs offensively to try and balance out the attack against that defense. So I'm going to be looking at that, and then what are the Kansas City Chiefs going to do defensively that they didn't do in the Super Bowl? Now the plan for the Chiefs, which I thought was the plan they should have had all along, was focused on stopping Saquon Barkley and make Jalen Hurts win the game with his arm, and they did hold Saquon Barkley to 57 rushing yards on 25 carries in Super Bowl 59, but Jalen Hurts won the game with his pinpoint accuracy, getting the ball to his receivers and great ball placement. So Steve Spagnuolo is going to have to face a question with a defense that came across as rather unathletic in the loss against the Chargers in Brazil. So we are really going to have to see how look at how that's going to go, and then who is going to be the go-to targets for Patrick Mahomes, because Rashee Rice is facing a suspension. Xavier Worthy is dealing with an injury. It is highly doubtful that he's going to suit up for the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday. What does this mean? Hollywood Brown, because Hollywood Brown had 16 targets and 10 receptions, while Travis Kelce caught I believe he caught a touchdown for the Chiefs in the game in their season opener. So the Eagles are going to be pinpointing on really those two receivers or pass catchers, and they're really gonna try and make someone else win the game for them. So a shorthanded Chiefs receiving core is going to have to find a way and make some plays against that Eagles secondary. Now the good news is that they think that Adoree Jackson is viewed as as a target spot uh, for from that defense, because the Dallas Cowboys heavily targeted him, and CeeDee Lamb, just despite all the drops that he had in the game, so they constantly went towards Adoree Jackson. So is Andy Reid going to dial up a similar idea by throwing out Adoree Jackson? So I'm going to be looking at that. A suddenly interesting game in my view is going to be a 1 p.m. Eastern game between the Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets at MetLife Stadium. And it's suddenly interesting, but based upon what the Bills did, what the Jets did over the weekend, those two teams hosted the two most entertaining games in the NFL last week. The Jets Steelers game that went back and forth had several lead changes in that one, and then of course the Bills coming all the way back and knocking off the Baltimore Ravens, with Josh Allen's heroics in the fourth quarter. So now in a league, remember, this is a league where anything could happen any given Sunday. So it is a game in the division for the Bills. It is a game against a Jets team that's going to be coming in with a lot of confidence based upon how Justin Fields played, and based upon the camaraderie of that team. Now, it is going to be a question as to how the Jets defense responds to not being able to slow down Aaron Rodgers in the opener, and it's a much taller task going up against Josh Allen and what he can do. And then you pair that up with the with what he has, and the confidence he's trying to build up with Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman, with the receiving, and Dalton Kincaid as well. But we don't know if Kincaid's going to play because he's been listed on the injury report for the Bills. So it's going to be a question of whether he's going to be able to go. So I think you look at that as well, and then you look on the other side. Ed Oliver was walking around practice today with a boot on his leg. And Ed Oliver made the defensive play of the game against the Ravens by stripping the football out of Derrick Henry's arm and leading to that big turnover in that game. So with Ed Oliver not there, I think you look at the Jets that maybe having opportunities to run the football against that defense, and that defense gave up over 200 yards of rushing against the Ravens. Now, granted, the Ravens had a historic year last year running the ball, so it wasn't a surprise that the Ravens just kept running the ball down their throats. But again, similar to what I talked about last week, can the Bills defense get off the field on third down? They had trouble doing it last year during the regular season. They had trouble doing it, especially in the playoffs against Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. Both quarterbacks are able to run the ball as well, in addition to throwing the football. And Justin Fields is more primarily a mobile quarterback who will be able to run the ball. He ran. I believe he ran for a couple of touchdowns in the game against the Steelers on Sunday. So the Bills' rush defense is going to have to be on point if they want to win the game on Sunday against the Jets. And look, I tabbed the Jets as one of the teams that I believe was going to be better than people anticipated. Though I don't know if they have the juice and what they need from the quarterback to win games against tough teams to go on and make the playoffs. But the Jets certainly are a team that should provide some entertainment this season at MetLife. It's something that hasn't happened in quite a while. Another team that I had as being better than people anticipated, though I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs or not, are the Raiders. And the Raiders are going up against the Chargers on Monday night. It is a late night Monday night game in Allegiant Stadium. That the Raiders will open up their home slate against the Chargers, and there's a lot of parallels that go with this. But the winner of this game will go to 2-0 and be in first place in the AFC West, and you got Jim Harbaugh and Pete Carroll that'll be renewing their coaching rivalry that the two of them faced off 3 times when they were when Carroll was at Southern California while Harbaugh was coaching at Stanford. And then, of course, the great battles for 4 years between the two with the 49ers and the Seahawks, including the NFC Championship game in 2013. And now the two of them are back on the sidelines in the NFL facing off against one another in Carroll and Harbaugh. And Monday is going to be Raiders coach Pete Carroll's 74th birthday. So to tell you how that he's the oldest head coach in the NFL. So with this game, it is good. I think it's going to be a battle of 2 different styles of fight and 2 different styles of presentation from the offense. And the Chargers, I believe that with them being able to run the football and try and impose their physical will against any team they face. That's why they drafted Amari Hampton and Justin Herbert was superb. He threw for 318 yards and 3 touchdowns in last Friday night's victory against the Kansas City Chiefs in Brazil, and now he's going to go on the road against the Raiders, the team that held the Patriots to just 13 points on Sunday, and Geno Smith also was superb in that game against the Patriots. He threw for 362 yards and a touchdown in the victory. So the Raiders were definitely able to move the ball up and down the field against that defense. But I think it is going to be a fun game to watch over there. The game will end at 1 a.m. Eastern on Tuesday. So I'll be looking into a full night of football on Monday night, starting with the 7 games. First game starts at 7 between the Bucs and the Texans, and then we will and then the second game on the list is going to be that of the Raiders and the Chargers. I think that starts after 10 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. So without any further ado, I'm going to reveal my Week 2 NFL picks against the spread. I am going to be able to move everything there. So last week I went 10-6 picking the winners, and against the spread I was 6-10, and there were some tough games to pick last week. And I wasn't particularly pleased about that. I really wanted to improve upon my record last year. So let's get to it. So we're gonna start with the game tonight. I did not preview Washington and Green Bay on this because I think it is too late for me to do that. So I'm going to get start briefly with that game because it's the first game on the list. So the Packers come in as 3.5-point favorites against the Commanders. The Packers were outstanding. You could argue the most complete team performance of the week, but by demolishing a talented Lions squad and beat them by 14 points on Sunday in front of a national audience. But now they have a taller task, having to go up against Jaden Daniels, who could very well be the best quarterback in his conference. So the Packers come in as 3.5-point favorites. I think this is going to be a terrific game between these two teams. Washington comes in with the quarterback advantage, so I think it's going to be a close game. It's going to come down to the wire. But I believe the Packers are going to pull this one out and win by a score of 27-24. Now, on to the games on Sunday. The Ravens are home favored by 11.5 points, taking on the Cleveland Browns. And the Browns outgained an opponent by 200 yards, and they lost. And I think that's a huge problem for the Browns going up against the Ravens. The Ravens are going to come in angry. Grant Delpit made some comments today about Derrick Henry, saying it's going to be easy to run to stop him, and I think Derrick Henry knows about it, and now it's perfect bulletin board material. Ravens crush the Browns. That's my bet. One of my best bets of the week. They win 31-13 over the Cleveland Browns. A suddenly intriguing game in Cincinnati between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are picked by 3.5 points in this one. And look, I can't. I think this is going to be a tremendous game. I think this is going to be one where the Bengals finally get Jamar Chase going. They get Joe Burrow going. I don't think they're gonna be limited to 141 total yards of offense in the ball game coming up on Sunday. So I'm gonna grab the points with Jacksonville because I still don't know if Cincinnati is going to be able to keep up to play well defensively to trust them to cover the spread. Because Trevor Lawrence, I think, is going to have a good game. I think this is a Brian Thomas Jr. game. I think they can also be able to run the football with Travis Etienne, who had a great game on Sunday against the Panthers. So I think this is going to be a close game, but I'm going to pick the Bengals to win 31-28. The Dallas Cowboys are 4.5-point favorites at home, taking on the New York Football Giants. And the Cowboys are coming off a game where they played well in a loss, and CeeDee Lamb dropped three passes, and any one of those were ones that the Cowboys could have went into Philly and beaten the Eagles. So I think this is the perfect opponent for the Cowboys to get right, because the Giants have major issues with the offensive line, and their best linebacker, Micah McFadden, he's out for the better part of at least a couple of months. So that's a big problem there. And then Russell Wilson. I think he's cooked, and I did not like the Russell Wilson signing when it happened. I liked the Winston signing more than the Russ signing, believe it or not, back in March. But I think the Cowboys are going to be able to run the ball again against the Giants defense that's going to have problems stopping the run again. So give me the Cowboys to win 30-17 over the New York Football Giants. The Chicago Bears and the Detroit Lions in Detroit. This is actually a pretty big game because the Lions are trying to avoid an 0-2 start. Actually, both teams are trying to avoid an 0-2 start in this one. The Lions are favored by 6.5 points. And look, I'm gonna grab the points to Chicago. I think the Bears showed a lot of promising things in the game against Minnesota on Monday night. It was not a game that they were able to hold on and win, but it is a game where I think they showed some promise going in. So you have that, but I think this is going to be one the Lions are going to win. But I'm going to grab. I don't like the 6.5 spread, especially in the division game. So I'm going to pick the Lions to win 25-22 over the Chicago Bears. I cannot believe the Miami Dolphins are going to be favored in the football game this weekend after what happened last week, but here they are. Dolphins favored by 1.5, taking on the Patriots. And I cannot stress enough how much I love the Patriots to win this game. Better coach, better quarterback. Dare I say more toughness in this one. Now the Patriots did not play well against the Raiders, but given that the Dolphins are probably might be team 32 out of 32 in my power rankings, I think says a lot here about how things are going there. So I'm going to pick the Patriots to win this game by a score of 24-20 over the Miami Dolphins. No Brock Purdy this week for the San Francisco 49ers. So Mac Jones, the guy who was supposed to be drafted 3rd overall by the 49ers in 2021, where everyone thought Mac Jones was going to go after the 49ers traded up from 12 to 3 to get a franchise quarterback after not believing in Jimmy Garoppolo. The Niners are 3-point favorites with Mac Jones as the quarterback taking on the New Orleans Saints. And look, I think this is going to be this is a tough game to pick, but I'm going to pick San Francisco. I think I also understand that George Kittle is not going to play in this game. But I think Christian McCaffrey is going to have a huge game on the ground. I think he's going to run for 150 yards. I think he's going to catch a few balls and score a touchdown. So I think this is going to be a Christian McCaffrey legacy game for him. So I'm going to pick the Niners to beat the Saints by a score of 16-10. The Bills are favored by 6.5 points, taking on the Jets. So I'm going to grab the points with the Jets because I think it's a division game. I think some good portion of the fan base is energized after the way they competed on Sunday. But I think the Bills are gonna prevail here. I think Josh Allen is gonna have a monster game. I'm gonna go 29-24, the Bills over the Jets on Sunday. So I'm going to grab the points with the Jets. The Pittsburgh Steelers are at home favored by 3 points, taking on the Seattle Seahawks. And look, I just think Sam Darnold going up against that defense, I don't think is a huge mismatch to me that favors Tara Austin's Pittsburgh defense. So I'm going to pick the Steelers to win an ugly one. I think Seattle's gonna play well defensively, but I think the Steelers win by a score of 16-10 over the Seahawks. The Rams are favored by 5.5 points on the road in Tennessee, taking on the Titans. Now, I was really wanting to grab the points for Tennessee, but I just can't. I think the Rams' defensive line against the Titans' offensive line is a mismatch that favors the Los Angeles Rams. Matthew Stafford, I think, is gonna play well. I think this is Puka Nacua is gonna catch a touchdown. I think Kyron Williams is gonna score a touchdown in this game. I think the Rams improved to 2-0, and they'll beat the Titans 21-13. The Arizona Cardinals, they're at home favored by 6.5 points, taking on the Carolina Panthers. Now, one of the most underrated portions of Sunday's slate of games was that I was impressed with Arizona defensively. I know they were playing the Saints, but the Cardinals showed a lot of signs of promise with that defense. They look young, they look fast, and I think Will Johnson it was one of the best picks of the draft. I love what the Cardinals did this offseason, improving a unit that really needed energy. And I think I'm going to be proven wrong with the Panthers. Their defense is dreadful. I think the Cardinals are going to score 28 points. They'll beat the Panthers by a score of 28-16. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. The next game on the list was the single toughest game of the week for me to pick. The Denver Broncos, they're favored by 2.5 points on the road in Indianapolis, taking on Daniel Jones and the Indianapolis Colts. Now, I think the thing with this game is that Bo Nix did not play well in Week 1. Threw 2 interceptions, and under 200 yards of passing. But it was basically a game manager type of thing where with that, besides those 2 interceptions, but the Colts look a lot better defensively, thanks to bringing in Lou Anarumo and giving him some talented guys to work around. There was a reason Lou Anarumo had received some head coaching interviews, during the 2021 and 2022 seasons when the Bengals went to the Super Bowl and AFC Championship game 2 straight years in 21 and 22. But I just think this defense is much better than the one Daniel Jones faced on against Miami on Sunday. I think this is going to be a game where the Broncos register 4 sacks on Danny Dimes, and I think the Broncos are going to show the upside they had going into the season, so by guarding their way to a 20-14 victory over the Indianapolis Colts. The Philadelphia Eagles are on the road in Kansas City, favored by 1.5 points. And look, I'm gonna grab the Eagles. I'm gonna lay the 1.5 here. I just think the Eagles are much younger, a much faster team at this day and age than the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think this is gonna be a good a better game for Barkley than what he had in the Super Bowl, and I think this is gonna be a game where the Eagles will make the plays at the end, giving the Eagles to win 23-17 over the Kansas City Chiefs. This was another very difficult game for me to pick. The Minnesota Vikings are favored by 3.5 points at home. Their home opener, taking on Michael Penix Jr. and the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the last just 9 months ago, these two teams met in Minneapolis. The Falcons were in the midst of a long losing streak, the performance of Kirk Cousins from that game led in addition to the following week. Led to him being benched for Michael Penix Jr. and Penix actually played a decent game on Sunday, but I just think that Vikings that their front four against that Falcons O line is with Penix's right blind side blocker not being there, I think gives an advantage for the Minnesota Vikings. I think it's going to be a good game, but I think the Vikings going to prevail and win and cover by a score of 31-26 on Sunday. The first of the Monday night games on the Disney family of networks, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they are on the road in Houston with the Texans favored by 2.5 points. And look, I'm gonna take the Bucs here. I just think right now the Bucs are the better, more inspired team. So that was a great job by the Bucs of finding a way to win a road divisional game against against your what is probably going to be your biggest challenger in the division this year. And I think I think that that Bucks defensive front against Houston's O line, I think, is another mismatch that favors the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I think it's going to be a limited showing here for the Houston Texans. I'm going to pick the Bucks to win this game by a score of 21-10. And then finally, the game between the Chargers and the Raiders. I can't wait for this one. The Chargers are a 3-point road favorite going into this game. And as much as I like Pete Carroll, I just think Jim Harbaugh and his Chargers are going to spoil his birthday in Vegas. I'm going to pick the Chargers to win. I think I'm thinking big game from Amari Hampton. I'm thinking big game for Lad McConkey, big game Justin Herbert, and I think the Raiders are going to be able to stay in this game because I think with the upgraded quarterback they had, and there was obvious with Geno's performance against the Patriots in week 1, but I think it's a different team week 2. Give me the Chargers to win by a score of 34-27 coming up on Sunday. That's going to do it for this edition of Hooked on Sports. Thank you so very much for listening to the podcast. Make sure you subscribe to my podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and YouTube now. So this podcast should be published by 4 or 5 o'clock this afternoon. So make sure you're subscribed to that, so this way you don't miss an episode. And until then, this is John Flynn saying so long. I'll be back here on the podcast next week to discuss everything that transpired in week 2 in the NFL. So long, everybody.